Hi, sorry about that. We had a bit of technical difficulty, but we are back, and we are the more important thing than that short video. So we will start as expected with Kirsten O'Connor, and she.
O'Connor.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Let's start again. Kirsten O'Connor
Thank you.
from Quest Tokyo, and also the president of FEW. Would you like to start by introducing yourself, just briefly?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, it's really a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you. Yes, I'm Kirsten O'Connor, sometimes mixed up with O'Connell. There's two of us in the community with very similar surnames, so no problem at all. Yes, I am the founder and director of Quest Tokyo, which is a company that I started in 2018. Prior to that, I was at the British School in Tokyo for 17 years. And the last 6 of those years, I was the head teacher of the primary school. And so I was not ready to leave Japan, let's put it that way. And so I could see a gap in the community here in Tokyo. And so I thought, right, well, I'll start a company here and see how we get on with that. And as you mentioned, I am also the current president of FEW Japan.
Wonderful. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll start with Quest. I was really interested when I read the Japan Times article that you were talking about as a head teacher. You had some interesting conversations with parents and you realized there's a need for education outside of the traditional school atmosphere. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yes, as I'd been at the school a very long time, and so in that time you build up relationships with families over long periods. But when you get into that headship position, I spent a lot of time meeting with families and talking about the trajectory of their children's education, the choices that they might make in the future, talking about their performance in class, all of the things that you love talking about. But what I found was, and this is very typical for international communities, is that the school becomes a real focus for international families, and everything is focused on the school. And if you were in a domestic situation back in London or back in the UK, there would be other places where you could get advice on schooling, changing school, what kind of education system you want your child to be in. And I never really felt that there was somewhere else in Tokyo where people could get that from somebody who'd been, at the chalk face, if you like, in education. And so I felt there was a gap. It was something that I love to do. I love to talk about education. You'll find that out in the next hour. But I also, I think it's really important that parents have that opportunity to talk in depth about their choices and what options they've got. And so that was the reason that I started Quest Tokyo. But actually, and we'll talk a little bit about this more later as well, actually my longer term goal with Quest Tokyo is to develop a special educational needs hub. And so I could see that the platform will need to develop over the years as we go ahead.
That's wonderful. And that's somewhere that I think is lacking, as special needs education in Japan for sure. But also the kinds of things that we'll talk about from your website, the services that you offer, you're really creating a bridge between the gaps, even in the international school education in Japan and studying abroad, especially in the UK. And you talk a little bit about the similarities and differences between British education and Japanese education, or British students and Japanese students. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I enjoyed talking about that with the Japan Times, actually. And that was a question they asked me: where do you see the similarities and differences? And I think there are aspects which are very similar about the two systems. Things like the challenges of learning languages seems to be prevalent across both, but also the expectation of high standards and so on. But my sense really is that if we could take the best of both systems, we could do something really quite spectacular. And by that I mean, I admire the Japanese system so much in that it generates people who really commit to society and commit to each other. And I think for those of us who've lived here a very long time and perhaps plan to in the long term as well, one of the reasons we stay is the harmony that you experience as a society here generally. Of course, I'm talking about the majority here. And I think for many of us, looking back to our home countries and our home education systems, I'm not sure we could be as confident to say that that is still the case in our home countries. But the thing I like about the British system, of course, it continues to have the academic rigor alongside the Japanese system, but there is definitely opportunity for students to be thinking, I'm going to use that very twee expression, outside the box, to be creative and innovative thinkers. And I think if we could implement some of that into the Japanese system, whilst implementing some of the responsibility for others and society into the British system, we could create something that hopefully would be spectacular. We all know that you can't just import things into different societies. So I think it's a pie in the sky dream, but certainly for me, those are the two areas that I admire across the two systems.
Yeah, really interesting. And I recently had a very good friend who went back to the UK after coming from the UK, raising her kids in Japan, and then going back to the UK. And she was really surprised how similar the systems actually are.
Oh
Whereas
yeah.
when she grew up, she felt that it was really different. But the systems are very testing based,
Yeah.
high, right? And
There's a lot of measuring in both systems, and when it's done well, that can be really powerful. When it's a hothouse, or when testing takes priority over the quality of experience and outcomes that students have, then that doesn't do anybody any good. But when schools are able to measure the progress and the outcomes that children are achieving, and then pivot and tailor the curriculum to help them make further progress and reach their real potential, that can be really, in fact, that's the ideal. That's where the power lies within that system. So yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities. Of course, we don't clean our classrooms in the UK, and I think that might be something we could do with
it's such
importing.
a good idea.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I love when my kids were in Japanese school and they would bring home their plant at certain, and they had to do growing food. And, there's certain aspects of being part of a community, being part of culture, which I wouldn't expect
No.
in a school, but it's
Mm.
a lovely aspect of
Even
education.
Yeah, and even when you see young children here taking complete responsibility for their backpack and their shoe bag, and it gets from school to home, whereas in perhaps other countries we might see some of that still sitting on the bus, or not making it home from school. So I think that learning of responsibility for self and others is a really really powerful trait in the system here. I'd love to see it exported more. It comes down to culture
Yeah,
and where we are.
sure. Let's talk a little bit about the services because it's not a school. What you're trying to do is an assist to what the school curriculum is doing. I've got your educational services page here. Do you want to introduce that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. We've got basically QUEST stands for Quality Education Services and Tutoring. You can imagine how long that took me to come up with, but it works. We were delighted when we landed on that. So there are two real strands. Education services really include supporting parents as they make decisions about schooling, as I say, whether they're looking at moving overseas, and the support they might need with preparing students to take entrance exams or learning English to be able to access the curriculum there. So that encompasses a lot of our Japanese clients. And it's really personalized. So sometimes parents come to me with exactly those areas. Other times they want to come to talk to me as an educationalist or as a head teacher, just about their children's experience in school, or their children's experience over the years of dealing with a particular curriculum area or a particular issue. So we're quite flexible with those, but actually our core area of that is supporting students as they move schools. And then the tutoring aspect, we offer a range of different subjects. to a range of different ages, to a range of different abilities. So a lot of parents come to us because their child is perhaps struggling with a certain thing. So they might be needing support with maths, or their confidence in maths, or their often writing is a challenge for many children. So they come to us for support for that. But we do also get families whose children are getting A's and they want A stars. And so they come to us to, if you like, polish those. Sometimes it's exam taking technique and question answering strategy, but to really polish up that performance, because they know they've got this real aspirations to get those top grades. So our tutoring works in that way, and we've got there's 12 of us, 12 tutors. We've got 12 part-time tutors, and they have a range of different experiences and specialisms. And one of the most important aspects of my role and my director within the company as well is to allocate and pair up student and tutor, because all the students are different and all our tutors are different, and it can be very powerful when you get that match right. So we spend a lot of time thinking about and finding out about the child, what their needs are, what the goals are, and thinking about which tutor would be best matched in that respect. The other thing we do with tutoring is group work. Most of what I've just talked about is either one-to-one or one-to-two tutoring, but we also have group programs, and most of those currently take place in Sanginjaya, and those are predominantly phonic-based programs. And we've got a number of small groups who work on developing their phonic reading and writing skills. So some of them come to us in our beginner group. They've had no exposure to at all, and we take them all the way through, right up to, we've got a group who were our intermediate phonic group last year. They've now graduated onto academic writing. So we've got a kind of a sequence that they move through. But that's been a very popular area, and we're always delighted to see that children come to us and they can't read, and this is the huge privilege of being a teacher, and within a year or two they're reading and writing with much more fluency than before. So that's
wonderful.
a real
That's real rewarding as a teacher too.
Hugely.
Yeah, opening the world of books to them. How lovely.
Oh, I know. I've always felt that. I just think that to teach a child to read, it's a skill, and right, reading is a skill that we'll do right to the end of our lives for all different reasons. But it may be some of the last things we do in our sort of last years, but somebody taught everybody to read. And I always feel that, I've been in education for 25 years, and I just think, gosh, the number of people who are in the world who you've taught to read. I just think it's a real privilege. I really do.
It's lovely. Of course, during COVID, this is all new, challenging. You can't have face-to-face tutoring anymore. How has the transition to online been for Quest?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and obviously very current. We switched into online learning in the middle of March. So we carried on at the beginning. We carried on a little bit, and we were sort of positioning ourselves as the anchor, if you like, for students who were, all sorts of different experiences going on at school. So we carried on for a little bit, but it got to the point where we thought, actually, we don't know who we're endangering. So we moved on to online learning. For some children, actually, it's been really powerful. And we've found that some have made as much, if not more, progress doing the online learning. Others hasn't matched quite so well, and you'd think that would be along age lines, but it isn't always. Some of the younger children have really thrived, and some of the older children have really struggled with it. But with the advantage that we've had is that all of our groups and our one-to-ones are obviously much, much smaller than if you're a class teacher in a school teaching 20 odd children. That's a very different situation. So we very quickly we made the decision on a Thursday, and by Monday we'd spent the weekend training ourselves and preparing all our materials, and we were online by Monday.
Wow.
And
fast turnaround.
I can't applaud my tutors enough, really, for the efforts that they put in. But it's been really interesting as a teacher to reflect on, even as an industry, the impact that this has had. Because as a teacher, at whatever point you are in your career, you've got a toolbox of teaching skills, and there's lots of similar ones across teachers. But of course, you develop your own style, and the tactics and the techniques that you use are personal to you, and you keep them in that toolbox. And the world's teachers in all systems overnight were given an empty toolbox in some in some instances, and have been spending the last 3 months teaching and refilling that toolbox with new skills. And that
Yeah.
I just
I know, and I think parents around the world have now realized how much we appreciate good teachers because
yeah,
we've had to take on the role of homeschooler all of a
yeah.
sudden, and teachers, of course, have the added burden of trying to teach the parents how to teach.
Yeah, that's it. And it's been fascinating, really, because how often, I mean, you of course have a window into school with Twitter and, photo galleries and so on, and your reports and parents' evening. But how often do you actually get to sit either next to or behind your child as they participate in a lesson? Very rarely, and you certainly haven't had 3 months straight of doing that. So it's given parents an insight into so many different areas that they perhaps didn't know about or hadn't even considered in some ways. So I think for parents, it's been, and for parents and teachers alike, it's been a very challenging time. And there's been an assumption that parents are at home and are able to homeschool. Parents are working. They
Yeah.
might be wearing the same clothes, but they're working, so children can't tell the difference between a parent that's at home working or not. But also, I think it's the content, and
Mm.
parents don't always know where the milestone. Well, of course, why would you know where the milestones are? And
Yeah.
we all experienced this when we did homework with our own parents, and they tried to teach us how to do long division, and we were saying we don't do it at school like that anymore. It's
Yeah.
exactly the same now.
Yeah.
It's just a generation. So
At least our kids are good at using computers. Often
yes,
often much better than we are. So
yeah.
that hurdle is not part of the problem. So that
Well, that's been a barrier for a lot of parents.
yeah.
Oh my, how do I use Zoom? No, most people hadn't even heard of Zoom before March. And how do I use Pear Deck? Who only teachers know what Pear Deck is, but it's a really
I've never
powerful
heard of
tool.
that. Yeah. But
It's
this
but
is
actually
this
the
is
other
one of
piece.
your tips that we're gonna bring up a bit later.
Yeah.
Just say a shout out. Melanie Brock says, "Hello, you two wonderful teaching women. Great discussion. Thank you, Melanie."
Hi,
And
Melanie.
Louise Poppy says, "Very interesting." Thank you, Louise. Thanks for joining in the discussion. One of the things that I was really struck by when looking at your Facebook page was the indoor outdoor active sat learning, the variety of movement. Do
Yeah.
you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm really passionate about that. I mean, as a teacher, I am obsessed with quality and educational rigor, of course, because at the end of the day, you want your children to make the most progress they can, but they also need to be enjoying it. So that doesn't mean I'm a believer in hot housing or anything like that. When children are engaged, when they've got a great quality teacher who is all about the experience those children are having and the outcomes they get, it can be very powerful in a classroom. But for me, and for the great teachers everywhere, I think we know that that's not the only thing that's important. The wider curriculum is just as important. And so enabling students to find things they love and to explore different languages, different sports, different outdoor opportunities, just different ways to challenge themselves is really important. And actually we're prevaricating at the moment, because last year we had a lot of summer programs, one of which was in Norikura up in Nagano, and we climbed up Mount Norikura. We did all this fantastic outdoor stuff. And this year, those kind of programs take a long time to plan and prepare, and it's just too late. The decision making has just been pushed too late to be able to do that. And I think that there would be anxiety amongst parents for kids to be doing that.
Yeah, I was going
But
to ask you about the July, August summer programs. So they've been put off this year, have they?
I think for the moment, yes, we keep swinging backwards and forwards, and I think a lot of the providers of summer programs and holiday programs are some. I can see some things starting to come up now, so I think we're all in the same boat. We're making decisions late.
Right.
We will probably do something at the end of August. We always do something called Head Start, which is the week before some of the schools go back, and it just gets the kids' brains and their hands back into the swing of things. But yeah, to come back to your original point, what I want through Quest is opportunities for children to have different experiences as well.
Yeah. One other interesting thing you did, I think it's already finished, Art in Motion. That was an
Yeah,
interesting project. You want to talk about that?
yes, we had a couple of art projects last year, and they were really fantastic, but we didn't have enough numbers to make it something that we were going to be able to do regularly. And I think that's part of the challenge in Tokyo, that we're all quite even though, you know, it's a massive city, but you have to, in the end, you have to plump for a venue somewhere. And it just depends whether people are local. But yeah, we did a project called the Light Project last year, where we had children come in and design lanterns. They were there for the week, and they chose a story or a character, and during the week they constructed a lantern, and it literally took them a week. But the teacher who was teaching that was a design technology and art specialist, and so, which was fantastic, because that's absolutely not my area of strength. So he taught them how to use airbrushes, hand drills, all the
Oh,
electrical.
wow.
The kids just loved it, and we sat and worked together around one big table. So although they were doing art and design, we were also chatting, and there were children who were 8, 7, and there were children who were 15. So it was just really a nice project. And the Art in Motion project was a stop motion technology project. So yeah, no, they were exciting.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, there's so many kids, as a teacher, you know, any teacher knows that there's some kids that do not learn unless they're doing, right?
Yeah, yeah, practical learning, exactly. And especially younger children, you know, that learning through, you know, this, there's an expression that makes some people cringe, but learning through play is really important. And I think the reason people cringe when they hear that expression is they think that it's just chaotic. And but in good classrooms, learning through play has got a very structured network of planning behind it. So kids can't tell what they're learning.
Well, let's segue into the wonderful French learning activity that you did, which I'm not going to attempt to say because my French is not there.
Yeah,
Is it
we call it
un
an afternoon.
après-midi in France or something? An
Yeah, that's
afternoon
correct.
in France? Yeah.
That's correct. We did, and we did 3 of those last year. And one of the reasons was I had a really, and I still do have a really fantastic French tutor, and we were mindful of the fact that students learn, and particularly in the British system, French is a really classic language that is always in the British curriculum as a modern foreign language. And we were mindful that then so many children have an hour or two of French a week, but you never actually hear them speaking any French. So we were wondering whether they were, first of all, whether they were really enjoying it, and whether or not it was having an impact. And so we thought, let's try and do something which is a bit more holistic. So the first one we did was the crown cakes. I can't remember what they're called now. It's on the poster. I can't
It
remember. But
kind of looks like an apple pie. It's
yes,
crepes and it's just beautiful.
so
And the kids made it from scratch, right?
right. So what we did, we had an afternoon. It was 3 hours. We did some language work. We did some art work in French. We did lots of speaking in French, but then we also did cooking. So we were making French recipes and things. So it was all, and we were writing the recipe down in French, and it was a real immersion experience. Which was really good fun. And the French teacher, we had a really great time. We couldn't quite find a way to make it more regular, but perhaps we'll come back to that at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, that looked like a great activity. I love the cards that they hold up when they want to say something.
Yeah,
And
that's right. They loved that, and it makes, you know, learning a language is, you've got to try and keep it all in your head, obviously. So it just gave them that prompt. The thing was called Galette des Rois, which is
okay,
crown of the king. Yeah.
galette, yes.
Yeah.
My daughter named our kitten that we adopted Garrett. And so at the vet, it has become Galette, of course, every time and I'm like, Galette? Galette. Okay, yes, I got
It's a
it.
beautiful pastry cat.
So maybe he would like it. We have to try. Let's talk about some of your tips. You've got great tips here. Let's some of my favorites. The Ichabog.
Yes. Oh, if you're not reading the Ichabod right now, you're behind the trend. Every J.K. Rowling of Harry Potter fame has written or wrote 10 years ago, actually. She wrote the book for her children, and it's been sitting in her loft all that time, and got it out recently. And every day she releases a chapter. So that's going to go from, what was it, the middle of May, and it will go all the way through to the middle of July. So the whole book will be, I'm reading it every morning.
Oh,
So it's
wow.
just one chapter every day. But it's a children's book, but it's, I would say, for sort of 8, 9 year olds to be able to read independently. But it's just a lovely one to read as a family too. It's got the theme is all about power and in some ways politics as well, but it's obviously child friendly, but that's a really good one.
Is
Yeah,
there
I was
any
trying.
magic, like Harry
It's not
Potter-esque, or
magic, no.
no?
No, she moved away from magic, but it's very powerful. It's got some dark political elements to it. So I think again she's writing on two different levels. Certainly adults are picking up on the dark side of
That's
dark
so
side.
interesting.
Yeah, I was
I
trying to find
have to check it out.
yeah, it's good. It's good, and it's got its own website. So just have a look, and you can flick through all the chapters. I think we're up to nearly 30 now, so you're going to have to,
Catch up.
yeah,
The weekend's here. Time to catch
yeah,
up.
yeah.
Also, you've got tips for writing, building writing muscles, how to get ready for writing. And I love the picture that goes with this is a child running outside, which is not your typical image of how you get ready to write, right?
Exactly, yeah. And that comes from an experience I had probably 10 years ago now, when we brought some trainers to the school to work with our early years team. So for our 3-year-old to 5-year-old children, the teachers of those children. And I asked them to come over to train the teachers on early writing and the kinds of activities that we would do. And I joined the training. So I sat down, and for the first hour, or the first few minutes, they started talking about body and pivot points and core body strength. And I sat there thinking, because when you invite people over from the UK or wherever, it's always a risk, because you do a lot of talking about what they're going to do, but they fly in and you have to really manage it closely. And I thought, oh no, have I made a mistake here? I asked them to do writing. They've not mentioned a pencil or a piece of paper yet, and it's half an hour in. But of course, I stuck with it, and they were absolutely right. Early writing is about understanding the pivot points that children have and the age-related milestones that they go through. So if you're expecting a child at the age of 2 to be able to pick up a pencil and write, there will be 1 or 2 who'll be able to do that. There are real stages that they go through. And so it's about understanding that. So as parents, the best thing parents can do for young children and between the ages of 2, 3, 4, 5 is to get them dangling on things in the park or building their core body strength, because until they've got that, the shoulder, elbow, wrist pivot points aren't strong enough to be manipulating writing effectively. So I learned a huge amount from those wonderful.
Wow. That's really
Yeah,
counterintuitive, isn't it?
yeah, but I've seen it over and over again. Children very young, who just haven't got the strength yet, and not for any other reason than age-related milestones. They're not ready yet. So you want to see early writing developed in that way. Doesn't mean they never pick up a pencil or anything, but of course they do. But it goes from a kind of macro process all the way down to a much more refined process.
Wow, fabulous. I love that tip. Next one, tips for home study. So you've got a bunch of links here: Book Trust, White Rose Math Hub,
Oh, two of my
Science
favorite.
Sparks, Scratch, BBC Bite Size, Audible, News Round Museums and Galleries with virtual tours. You want to take any of those on?
Oh, absolutely. The Book Trust is really fabulous. It's got a range of really popular texts that children love to read, and they're digital. And so you can flip the pages and you can select whether you read it or somebody reads it to the children. And there's lots of really classic books that the kids love in there. So that, I think, one of the reasons I put that up was because when we first went into lockdown, it became clear really quickly that copyright challenges exist. So I was all set with my pile of wonderful books to sit and read them on YouTube, and I realized actually I can't, because there's copyright on it. So I was looking for ways for parents to get access to great books without having to buy them all from Amazon. So that was that one. And the White Rose Maths Hub is one of my favorite websites. The UK a few years ago delegated the training of teachers for teaching of maths to privately owned almost hubs around the country. It used to be the local education authorities, government local education authorities, but these hubs sprung up all around the country. And we made a fabulous connection with the White Rose Maths Hub team, and the materials that they've got on there, not just for teachers actually, but for the home learning for parents. If you wanted to do half an hour of maths or an hour of maths with your child every day, it's really self-explanatory and really thorough. So I would highly recommend those two.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of maths.
Oh no, get on the maths.
Maybe I'll have a look. I struggle with ever since they've been in elementary school asking for help with math.
Do you know what's interesting with that is that I challenge parents when they say that, because you would never say that to your children, that, oh, I struggle with reading. There's a real shame about being illiterate.
That's true.
But we are very quick to say, oh, I'm not good at maths. So many parents do it. It's almost like, I can't do it, so don't ask me. But it makes me wonder about the experiences we had of maths teaching, but also our mindset about our math skills.
Always being told that you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
But it's like what you said too. The style of teaching maths has changed in the classroom. So if they ask me, the way I do it to get to the answer is completely different, and they have to show their work. So they'll say to me, that's not. And I was like, well, follow what your teacher said. Definitely, don't do what I'm doing.
It's true. There was a big revolution sort of 15 odd years ago where schools were encouraged to unpack maths for children, because when we were at school, we learned how to do it, and you were taught how to do it, and the way you learned it was just by doing hundreds and hundreds of them until you got the hang of it. But when you look at some children, do that and they make the most ridiculous mistakes, and they can't see where they made the mistake, coming up with numbers that are smaller than the number they were multiplying by, and they can't see the reason they've made a mistake. And that's because they don't understand what they're doing. They're only learning how to do a certain method. So there was a big revolution of unpacking teaching of maths a long time ago. So that's why you hear all these different strategies like chunking and the grid method. And we're, in all different systems, they've got all different names. But yeah, we're doing exactly what our parents did to us, aren't we?
So they've obviously got a much better method, and I'm going to try to learn it next time. I'm not going to say I don't know how to do it. I'm going to say, teach me how to do it. I want to learn.
Tell me how to do it.
Tell me how to do it. The next one was Science Sparks.
Science Sparks. Yes, I'm always really conscious that I talk a lot about English and maths. And it was always like that as a head teacher as well. I spent a lot of time talking about English and maths, but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy or really value the other areas of the curriculum. So I was looking for things for parents to do at home with their children, and things that were practical, not just in terms of hands-on, but also things that you might have around the house, rather than having to go and buy sort of specialist kit as such. So that's why I was looking for things that parents could have a go at home. Because I think we've had quite a different experience in Japan of lockdown. It's been much more gentle than my sort of counterparts and my family in the UK, where they literally were locked down. So they've needed to be a lot more. There's needed to be a lot more focus on activities that they're doing home. Yeah. The other one that was at the bottom there was the exhibitions, the museums that have got 3D exhibitions and walkthroughs, and there's so many of those. I just stumbled across another one actually, which I haven't put up yet, but the British Museum has got the Egyptian exhibition on, and this is an advantage of COVID-19 actually. Because of COVID-19, they've got specialists narrating the tour. So as you go through, they're highlighting things which you wouldn't exhibition on your own. So in some ways, it's better.
Yeah.
Mm.
I was just on the British Museum website because when I interviewed Paul Martin, who's a Japanese sword specialist, he used to work there as a
Oh,
curator. And
wow.
so I was looking at the Japanese section and I was like, wow, this is a great website. This
It's
is
a
really
beautiful website,
fantastic.
and
Yeah.
what a beautiful place to work as well. Wow.
One other one, coding, Scratch.
Scratch, yeah. Scratch is the coding language for children that comes out of MIT in the US, and you can there's an online version of it that you can use as a parent, and basically what it teaches the children right from an early age is logic blocks. So they understand they start to understand how coding works and what the different sections of it are. The natural progression on from that is to learn coding languages. Scratch is a much more visual, physical movement of the kind of coding that you need to create small movies or animations and things like that. But lots of schools use Scratch because coding is now integrated completely into the curriculum. And that's been in the last 10-ish years that's happened, that teaching computers or computer studies or technology has moved from learning how to use PowerPoint and Microsoft Office to learning how to actually program a computer and use it kind of from the backside. A lot of us are front face users of technology because we never learned the back end. So children now are expected to develop those skills right from a very early age, even sort of age 3 and up.
I think it's great because that's their new reality in this
That's right.
modern world. And if they can, like Minecraft, they were doing coding in Minecraft
Yeah.
one summer, and just picking up those skills, having those, are they called raspberries? They
Oh yeah.
right, building your own computer and coding and
It's
everything.
incredible, really. Really incredible. And you see kids doing that 40 years younger than us, or me. And, yeah.
It's very exciting.
Mm.
Bite Size, BBC Bite Size was another one.
Yeah, Bite Size is great. Those are lots of stories and poems and activities, all to do with different subjects in the curriculum. And some of them are like some of the more traditional tales and that kind of thing. So again, lots of animated opportunities there. The reason I put things like that up there is because I think there's a lot of families who are looking to make sure their children maintain their language while they're at home, particularly in English, and that includes maintaining vocabulary. And those lots of those bite-size animations have got really good vocabulary in them. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but Peppa Pig, which I know many parents learn to love and hate, is a really super product for that. They really embed great language, verbal language, and expressive language into those cartoons. So yeah, that was the reason I chose that one.
Yeah, it was interesting for me when my kids were little. The ones that I thought were great teachers growing up, Sesame Street, Electric Company in the States, I tried to buy the DVDs and it says not to be used for education
Yeah,
anymore. And then things like Blue's Clues, Peppa Pig is
yeah,
the new style of education, and it certainly works a lot better.
yeah.
It's a
Well, they
lot less
embed.
distracting. It's very focused, a lot of repeating, right?
Yeah, they call it's over learning. So they keep, as you say, they keep repeating the same language, and then gradually it takes a long time, but it goes in, and then it takes a few months, but it comes back out of their mouths. Yeah, I mean, Sesame Street has its strengths, but it was of an age, wasn't it? So
And it
yeah,
was it was breaking new ground.
yeah,
Nobody had done anything like that. And then looking back on Sesame Street and how the focus was on diversity was
yeah.
so ahead of its time
Oh, well,
that
decades ahead of its
I
time.
really appreciate that.
Yeah.
But one thing I noticed with Blue's Clues and stuff, and you learn this as a teacher as well, is waiting for the answer. The pauses, right?
Yeah.
Like even though there's a TV show, Peppa Pig or Blue's Clues would ask a question and wait for the kid watching to answer. I mean, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
would. My kids would.
Sucks them straight in. Yeah, it's great.
Write it on your notebook. Write it
Yeah.
on your notebook. Great. Awesome. Let's shift gears a little bit. Talk about your work at FEW. You're the president
I am
since
the
last
president.
year, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I took over last September, and it's been a very unusual year, let's say. We obviously, FEW is all about building community, offering a place where women can be empowered through the connections that they make, but also exchanging ideas and finding solidarity with others. I think we're all very well aware that we as women need to build this network. We must build this network to be effectively supporting each other as we, in whichever path we're choosing at the moment. And so it's been an interesting year. We're online for now. We switched up to online meetings in March, and we will continue to do that probably for the remainder of this year. And it's been interesting, actually. In some ways, it's been a big challenge, but I'm sure my counterparts on the team and the people who are attending the events, there's always a quite an incredible amount of energy that is generated in a FEW meeting. Ordinarily, we would meet up, we do lots of maces are exchanging, we eat, we have a glass of wine, which always helps with the energy. We eat sausage rolls from the delightful Kiwi kitchen. That's always a highlight as well. But there really does, as the meeting sort of grows, there's always this fabulous energy. And we were worried about whether or not we could maintain and grow that through the screen. But actually, I certainly still feel it from the group. And what we found is we've had much greater uptake for events. And we've even had attendance from people in Canada and East Coast of America, Switzerland, Singapore, which is really impossible when we're meeting in the center of Tokyo, and also even in wider Japan. So people are able to join from wherever they are. So in some ways, it's really helped us to mobilize the momentum of FEW. We're heading into the year of our 40th anniversary. So FEW was founded in 1981. By a woman called Betsy Rogers, I think, and she started something which has really grown, and it's had several different sort of incarnations over the years. When it first started, it was FEW stood for foreign executive women. And that was a very niche group, and it was necessary at the time. If we imagine how working women in Japan 40 years ago must have really needed that, particularly foreign women here. But over the last sort of 20 or 30 years, it's developed into a much more diverse group. And for the last 7 or 8 years, the acronym has stood for Empowering Women. And as we go forward into the next few years, we are finding that there are many ways to describe FEW, and so we are going to move into having lots of different ways of identifying the group. But the wonderful thing is that there's people who are students, there are people who are retired, there are people from all over the world, and we have this shared interest in supporting each other and helping make those connections. So it's been an interesting few months.
Yeah, a big transition to go online completely.
Yeah.
And that's interesting that it's not just a Japan focus, that it's spread.
Yeah, and it's actually been something that we've been. I'm gonna say murmuring, not talking, because it's just been something that's people have mentioned before. Can we have an online stream or something so people outside of the meeting can get to it? Because 7 o'clock on a Thursday night is not ideal for everybody to be able to travel to an event, and it's been something that's been kind of sitting in the ether of things to do, let's say. But we've done it. And I think what it's done is it's pushed our skills, our motivation, and it's proved to us that actually there is interest. And I think we can definitely harness that and grow it in the years to come. I think future boards can take that forward.
That's great. And it looks like you offer like some very practical skills. You offer mentoring sessions.
Yeah, we've got we're a lot of the members' meetings are very varied in the kind of session content, if you like. So in the last few months, we've had Leslie Mackenzie, who is the coach of the women's national rugby team, Japanese women's national rugby team, and she was really fabulous in talking to us about being essentially a woman I'm sorry to say, but in a man's world of rugby, and how she's coped with that, and how she's motivated those women to perform in that area.
I'm embarrassed to say I didn't even know Japan had a women's rugby team.
Well, they're developing, let's say. So they
Now
do.
I want to promote them.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely it. And actually, if COVID was not existing, we'd be going to watch them train, because the Women's Rugby World Cup is next summer in New Zealand. So they'll be having, ordinarily they'd be having warm-up matches over the next year. So hopefully we'll be able to manage that. But then we also had another one on resilience, and about how to do business during COVID, the area of COVID. So it's quite varied. But one of the new developments is that we now also have virtual lunch. So if you're in your office, or you're at home, or you're out for a walk or whatever, you can just sit yourself on a bench or at your desk, get your lunch out, and zoom in for an hour and meet some people. We always have a co-host who talks about a topic. The next one is on the 7th of July, I think. The details will go up in the next week or so, and that's going to be there's going to be a Black Lives Matter theme, actually. And it's just been a really lovely opportunity to get more people together. We've had in-person lunches over the last few years, but we get far more people coming into the virtual lunches. And our special events director, who leads those, is also going to start developing some. We're still coming up with a name, but it'll be peer-to-peer career championing or something like that, where we can talk to each other about our careers. Over the next, we'll probably start that around September as well. So
I
because
see you've got an event July 9th, Summer
yeah,
Cheer.
we do. In July, we always have basically a drink together, and we don't always have a speaker, but it's an opportunity to reflect on the year, to socialize with each other, and just to celebrate, really. And so we'll do the same this July. It will be an on-nomi, as we are all aware of those now. And so we'll encourage everybody to bring a glass of wine, bring their sausage rolls if they can manage it, and we'll celebrate the last few months. We've got a big.
I'm pretty good at making vegan sausage rolls.
Oh,
I'm vegan, so yeah.
very good. I'm sure that would be very popular. This year actually is
It's
every
hard to
other year.
share over the computer,
Yeah,
though. Yeah.
it's very messy squeezing it into the skid. The USB drive is never the same. But every other year, FEW has an event called the Career Strategy Seminar, and it's a biannual event, which is on a Saturday. It's a whole day event, and we bring together a collection of speakers who present on different aspects of career and work life. And this year it always takes place in May, but of course the middle of May was not ideal for this year, so we postponed it to October, thinking that we might be able to be in person, but we'll do it online this year. But that's going to be a really exciting event. We still have an Olympic theme to that, so the theme will be bold is gold, and all of the kind of titles for the workshops will be around the Olympic theme. But we're very much looking forward to that as well in October the 17th. And all the marketing for that will be coming out over the summer.
Okay.
I think it's also worth me mentioning one of the big pieces of development that our volunteer board have done over the last few months, particularly our vice president and our sponsorship director, is we're moving on to a strategic sponsorship opportunity. We're looking for companies to join us. We've added 2 new membership types, basically. So there's obviously the individual member, but we've added 2 new ones. One is an organizational member, where there is a fixed amount that companies can donate, and through that then they get access to our community and marketing for their services and their logos and so on. And then our top level is going to be strategic corporate members, and those are companies who give a big chunk of money, which then helps fund the services that we offer through FEW. Because over the last sort of 2 years particularly, but over the last 40 years, it's grown into something really large. And we're now a very digital heavy organisation. On the 1st of July, we will be an incorporated association.
Oh,
So we'll be
wow. Big
Profit
change.
Association,
Yeah.
which is a big change, and it's been needed. It's been a long time developing, but it is needed. It enables us then to have sponsors who can support the efforts of empowering women
Yeah.
in this country. So
Definitely. I was talking yesterday to Alana Bonzi, and she runs Sego NPO, and they do a lot of CSR
right.
collaboration with companies sponsoring her projects, which do good for the community and the environment. This is the same kind of thing. This is great branding for any company that wants to show that they care about equality and female empowerment. And
Exactly, and there's a lot of women in Tokyo doing great things, and we're all there's too many manels here. We need to make sure that these women are out there and have got access to the community, and I think there's a lot of companies who support that and applaud it. So we're hoping that in the next few months we will bring on some additional strategic corporate members and some
wonderful. And I hope the focus is not just Tokyo, as someone who does not live in Tokyo.
No, exactly. And this is the thing. I mean, actually, we're few Japan, so it's been difficult to connect beyond Tokyo because it's mostly been face to face. But with our new digital existence, we would love to see you.
Silver
And
lining. I love
yeah,
it.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah, it was the same with Robin Lewis and Social Innovation Japan. I've
right.
for years wanted to be at their events and asking them, please live stream it, and I can't come to Tokyo. And now they are because, COVID. So
Yeah. So
there is
thank you,
a silver
COVID.
lining.
Yeah.
That sounds great and so necessary in Japan. I think necessary anywhere, but especially necessary in Japan. Uh, do you want to talk a little bit? We've got about 9 minutes. You had some great advice for talking with your kids about COVID. I think that was a theme.
Yeah, yeah. We this was something actually that some of the content of this area was learnt during the 2011 earthquake, because after that event, of course, it affected so many of us. Certainly not as much as it did in the northeast of Japan, but we were in school at that time, and we found that we needed to be much more cognizant of the way that we were talking to children about it. And the reason that parents and teachers need to be aware of the way that we talk to kids is that during these kind of, you might say, catastrophic or real, like, groundbreaking or ground shaking events, children see that the adults in their life who they've always felt can solve everything suddenly can't control everything or can't solve everything. And that was particularly true in 2011. But it feels similar now, that there is something much bigger than our family unit. There's something much bigger even than our community and our countries that is affecting the world. And it's important that when we talk to children, that we make it age appropriate, of course, but that we're honest with them, that we are finding ways to live in a different way, but also that they're still safe within their family, and that we'll do the best everything we can to make sure we're safe as a family and that family unit is strong. And I think I put a link up to a particularly good doctor whose name I've forgotten now, but
Dr. Ranj?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. He's very popular in the UK because he he does quite a lot of talks with children about all different topics, but he did some really good ones for this. And so I think as parents, it's important that we're honest with the children without creating greater anxiety. But I think if we try to pretend nothing's wrong, kids know something's odd, and so
Yeah.
we have to be honest, but as calm and age appropriate as we can. I mean, during the earthquake, I said to parents quite quickly, watch the media that your child is watching. And that
Yeah,
doesn't matter whether it's a catastrophic situation or not. Children are absorbing the media that they're exposed to. So
definitely.
that
And
was one of the,
it's not, I mean, it's gone further than COVID now. With
yeah,
my kids are both teenagers, and they are watching stuff about Black Lives Matter, about George Floyd. They saw that video it's really traumatic. It's very important that they know what's going on and why the protests are happening, but why are the police attacking protesters? This world, and climate change is another one. It's overwhelming. It's
Yeah.
what is happening, and they're watching things that I don't see them. We're not watching together because a lot of teenagers are on their own screens.
That's right. And it's shocking to us. Seeing these kinds of things are absolutely and rightly shocking to us. But for I don't know how I would have reacted to that as a 13 or 14-year-old. So we do need to be really mindful. I think it's very difficult for parents, particularly parents of teenagers, to monitor what they're looking at, because social media, everything's just right there in their hand the whole time. So
Yeah.
it's tricky. But I think that's why, if there's a way to generate a culture within the family of talking, of
Yes.
being able to talk about anything, and I know that's very,
Family dinners or
yeah,
family meals. You
yeah,
know, I mean, it's so easy when you're busy. Like you said, parents are working at home. They're not like all free time. Everybody's busy, even though
mm,
they're at home. But having at least one meal a day where you sit down and you just make time together and you don't have your screens on, and you just have that chance, you open up that opportunity to talk.
and talk about the tough stuff.
Yeah,
No, because this is tough stuff. This is real tough stuff, and it has to be addressed.
yeah.
But I think that's been one of the nice outcomes of COVID, really, that we have, although we've been working at home and it's been challenging, in some ways we found more time to be with family, even though we're not necessarily doing things together. We're in the proximity of family. And in some ways, I think a lot of people look a lot healthier than they were before. The work stress has been different, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to end with one of your favorite quotes from Maya Angelou, right? And do the best you can till you know better. Then, when you know better, do better.
Do better. That's right. Yeah.
I think that's perfect for sustainability, seeking sustainability, but it's perfect for education. It's perfect for so many things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We have a few minutes left. Do you want to talk about any other topics or any future aims or goals?
Yeah, I've got, I suppose I mentioned a little bit about the SEN Hub, which is an ambition that I am quite determined to bring to fruition. As you mentioned, there's lots of people doing great stuff for children with learning difficulties in Japan. Sometimes they're just difficult to find. And what I want to do with the hub is to have a centralized place where schools can come to get support and training, but also families can come to get assessments and to find therapy. It won't be like a school, it will be a center where people can come and get services, essentially, and community. So that's something that I'm working a lot on at the moment, and that's a 5-year plan that I'm 2 and a bit years into. So it's starting to become real, which is great. And the other thing I'm really trying to develop is something called Talk Education Tokyo. And as a head teacher, I felt, apart from the absolute swamped in the daily mundanity of leading a school, I found living here that there wasn't enough opportunity for me to talk about the blue sky education aspects. And there are many, many people in this city who are interested in education, whether they're in the sector themselves or whether they've just had a great experience or a poor experience of their own education. And so I want to generate a platform where we talk more. This is at the early stages. This was something that was kind of born in December in my mind. And so COVID has kind of slowed me down a bit, but that's something that hopefully people will see a bit more of.
Wow, wonderful. Well, you're doing so much. How do you have time for yourself?
Well, yes, it's varied, let's say.
How do you manage stress and all the different, how do you juggle everything? What's your tips for the
How do I?
overworked?
Yeah, I've got into a better. I've got. It took me a while to get out of the system of being a head teacher, which was very institutionalized. And I think the release of that and having many different plates spinning keeps my interest. I'm passionate about all of the things I'm doing, so it's exciting. All of the things I'm doing are exciting. I go to bed much later than I've ever done, but the commute being reduced in the last few months has given me back some of that time, which is quite nice. But yeah, I just think talking and making sure you keep perspective of what you're doing is the best way to do it.
You had some great advice for entrepreneurs, resilience, communication skills, relationships, and flexibility.
Yeah, you've got to be able to pivot. And the last 3 months have proved that to us, hasn't it? You've just got to be able to pivot in your business models and approaches. So yeah,
And don't give up and keep asking, keep trying, right?
yeah, don't give up. We just have to keep trying. And I always used to say that to the children. If you can't do something, you just have to keep you. If I used to say, this was my opening sentence at the beginning of the year. If I look in your school books this year and you've got everything right, that means you didn't learn anything new. So I want to see some things that you've got wrong, because that means you've battled with something and you've had to work through it to then get it right. And that freed them up from making mistakes and trying things which were too difficult. So I suppose we should apply that to ourselves too.
Wonderful advice. And I think that is our time. What a wonderful way to end it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
I really
much.
appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your busy, busy day
Not at all.
and sharing what great work that you're doing. And I wish you all the best. And I'm cheering for you all the way.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk, and I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank
Oh,
you.
wonderful. It was great. Last comment here from Marissa Galengser. Great advice. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you, Marissa. And thank you all for your comments and questions. And it's the weekend, but we will be back Monday to Friday with great talks next week. So please join us again. Thank you so much, Kirsten. Have a good day. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Take care.
Bye.